Okay, how's everyone doing? Tired? Any plans for the weekend? No plans? Super Bowl. Raise your hand if you're going for the Patriots. What? You going for Bad Luck? Raise your hand if you want the Seahawks to win. Raise your hand if you care less. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you just want to see the halftime show and commercials. Alright. Okay, so we'll have our quiz. Our quiz will open up over the weekend. You'll have until Monday at midnight to finish it. It's going to cover the first 4 chapters. I'll upload the slides. I'll put an announcement. The slides will be in the files section on Canvas. It should show each chapter. Chapter 1, slides 2, 3, 4. I like to give kind of open-ended questions, meaning like apply something to your own personal experience that we've learned, right? So you're not going to see multiple choice, fill in the blank, those sorts of things, right? And I'll put up some little bullet points too, kind of what we're going to cover in the quiz before you actually have to take it. All right, so continuing chapter 4, we talked last class about sensation and perception. Where did we leave off? Anyone remember where we left off? Sensation, perception. Right? We said, hey, the human body is an energy converting machine. It's constantly surrounded by energy of some kind. It can be light, which comes in the form of waves. It can be sound, which comes in the form of waves. It can be taste, which comes in the form of chemicals. Right? It could be touch, which comes in many different forms, right? Whether we're pushing a force, pressure, temperature, pain has to do also with touch, right? So not just your skin, but your joints, your bone, how you receive that information, how you convert it into pain signals. So we'll just kind of continue on. I think we left off at the eye, right? So we'll go back to the eye. How does the eye take in information? Process, make sense of it. So just a quick review. Okay, we say, hey, we just want to learn some basic concepts of it, how we sense and perceive. They're different, right? Sensation is receptors and nervous system receive these signals, some stimulus energies. Perception is how we organize and interpret those signals. We all organize and interpret differently. Like, hey, we are different. Our maybe genetics are slightly different, right? The way we were raised, the way things we were surrounded by in our environment. And those will differ how we mix up those things that we organize and interpret sensory information in terms of creating meaningful objects, right? Things that have meaning. They say, hey, things that can impact any of the senses. Have we been exposed to it for a lot of time? Sure. Then we don't notice it as much, right? This is something new. You will be stimulated and notice. Even when you're looking out using your eyes, things that you may notice a shift of something new, but then they're usually just the same old, where it's classroom. Right? And those all impact. All right, and then we said bottom up, top down process. Right? We say, hey, bottom up starts with taking in information from your external environment, shooting it up to the brain to process. Top down is like, hey, do I remember this thing? Do I remember it's a non-factor? Is it something new? Something new, how do I make meaning of this new thing that I see, hear, taste, smell, etc., etc. And we just convert information to meaningful information. We say, hey, we all get different kind of thresholds. If we can hear something, the same sound 50% of the time, then it means that that's the particular threshold for that sound, right? If we can taste something, that exact kind of profile of it, 50% of the time, then it means that that's our threshold right there. That amount of of salt, that amount of sugar, that amount of such and such, right? Now we have restaurant. Covered all this, so let's get to the eye. Well, here's a quick one, right? Kind of how we adapt to sensation, right? We say, hey, diminish sensitivity as a consequence of constant stimulation. If you've been bombarded with the same sound, it goes away. People who live close to train stations don't notice the train anymore, right? And then somebody new comes visit the house, and they're like, how do you live here so loud? The train, I don't know, what are you talking about? Why? Their brain has adapted to the constant stimulation of the same sound, the same patterns of sound. Therefore, the brain says it's irrelevant. It's nothing relevant, right? That's how the brain interprets. But if there's something new, a gunshot, right? What was that? A firecracker or a gunshot? The brain's trying to make sense. If I heard the difference between what a firecracker sounds like or a gunshot, that would be new information, and the brain would focus on it, right? So it helps, right? It kind of helps to adapt. It helps to aid focus by reducing background chatter. Influences how the world is perceived in a personally useful way, right? Sensory receptors are sensitive to novelty or new, right? Sensory adaptation even influences how we perceive emotions. So the same thing goes with emotions. What are you constantly kind of used to in terms of how people act? So for example, you would come into an environment with a group of people and you're like, man, why act like that? Because it's new to you, that's why. The other people in the group says, act like what? You don't see it. I don't see it. Why? My brain has been a constant energy stimulation. My brain says it's irrelevant. Someone new says, oh, this is interesting. I have to make meaning of why they act like that. Right? They're trying to interpret it in something. Right? Because it's new. Okay, here's one. Emotion adaptation, right? Here they would like you to do it, but we don't have to. But if you were to focus on this face for 20 seconds, and then look at the next face, you will see that this person appears to be what? So, what emotion would you say this is? So basically, if you were to focus, right, on this for say 30 seconds and then look at this one, you would see a different pattern of an emotion. You may see that this person looks scared. Like this, if you were to have this be constantly in your mind for at least 30 seconds and quickly look at this, you'll pick up a different emotion, right? But if you were to say, look at this and start off and say scared, 30 seconds, and then you look back here, you're like, actually, this one looks scared, this looks angry, right? So kind of whatever you're exposed to over the course of the time, if there's a new information kind of from the same thing, especially a face with an emotion or gesture, you'll see something different, right? Which means that when we meet new people, our brain is trying to interpret, how are you feeling right now? Who's this person? Right? Sad right now. Why do you look like that? Right? But if you've been around somebody for a long time, you've constantly seen this facial gestures a million times, you know exactly how to feel. Your brain has registered that information. Alright, let's get to the eye. Okay, we say the eye. The eye focuses on light. Light is a form of energy waves for the most part, right? You ever take physics, you know that light is both wave and particle. Wave moves, right? Photons and you say, hey, wavelength, the distance from the peak of one light wave or sound wave to the peak of the next. Other light waves go like this, like in an ocean. So the top is the crest, and the bottom is the trough, right? And here we say that would determine the wavelength, how it goes from the top to the next top. What's that distance? Intensity, amount of energy in the light wave or sound wave, which influences the way we perceive brightness or loudness, right? Determined by the wave's height. So you like back to that wave. If it's really tall height, then it's really bright, right? The amplitude. The same would be for sound. It would be viewed as a louder sound. Hue, dimension of color that is determined by the wavelength of light. What we know as the color names: blue, green, and red. Blue, green, and red are usually the primary colors in your eyes and your color receptors, which we call cones. They're mixed together to make every color that you can possibly see. No matter how many colors you see, maybe 1,000. And it depends. We said women tend to have more cones than men, so women can see color usually better than men. Men tend to have more rods, which is for dim, low light, and grayscale things, to see movement in the dark. Evolutionarily, to protect and make sure there's not threats out there. Right, so a lot of things can impact the way we see. Like, well, how bright is it? And depending on how bright something is, the color may change for us. Right? If it's dark, we can't actually see the color. It will change the color depending on if it's light or dark. Okay, well, we say, hey, human beings only have visible light. That's what we call visible light. Doesn't mean that it encompasses the whole electromagnetic spectrum, right? So this is part that humans extend from the shorter waves of blue-violet light to the longer waves of red light. So we can only see that part of the spectrum. Other organisms are sensitive to different portions of the spectrum. Bees, for instance, cannot see what we perceive as red, but can see ultraviolet light. So bees don't see anything red, right? Their eyes, their receptor cells are not activated by the spectrum of red. There's no activation, therefore they can't see it, right? Also, too, dogs see pretty much in grayscale. Dogs really don't see in color that way. But dogs can see shapes and patterns really good, right? So they can notice people based on height, width, depth, graphic, right? They have good facial memory, extremely good. If they've seen you one time, they've seen you a million times. They remember you, right? Or if you leave the house, dog goes and like sits, plays. When you come back, the way the dog's memory works is if you left 5 minutes ago. So the dog's always happy to see you regardless. Okay, so here we go. Here's all the light. We see things go all the way from gamma rays in terms of electromagnetic wavelengths, all the way to radio broadcasts. Things going into your phone right now that have internet and signal to make phone calls and texts. So we don't see gamma, we don't see X-rays, we don't see ultraviolet UV rays, we don't see infrared, we don't see radar, we don't see any of that. What human beings can see is this narrow strip, right? Just measured in a particular length of light, nanometers. All right, so with those wavelengths, we say, hey, short wavelengths create high frequency. High frequency just means like, oh, it happens quicker. Right? The waves happen quicker because it's shorter, right? And that creates bluish colors that activate receptor cells for blue. Long wavelength, right? Low frequency creates red colors, right? Really great amplitude ones with really tall heights. The wavelengths create bright colors, right? And small ones create dull. Right? Depending on what happens, our brain may get excited from different colors, or our eyes may get tired because of different colors. One of the most exciting colors is red, right? Coca-Cola has red can. It's probably one of the most recognized brands on the planet, right? Ferrari usually has Ferrari red vehicles, and those things excite why we pay attention to things that are red. But some other factors may be at play. Why is red such a alert color to human beings? Why do they interpret the color red something to be stimulating or very, very aware or alert of? What is it about our experience with the color red? What does red signal to most people? You stop. So obviously you're like, that's important. So we better, we didn't pick blue stop signs, we didn't pick orange, we didn't pick yellow. Why? Remember we said this is about survival. What is something about the human body that's red? Right? So like you're experiencing blood means life or death. Usually, that's the first thing we say like danger. Oh my gosh, somebody's bleeding. That can mean life or death quickly, right? That also impacts how we view red. So we pay attention to red. But we pay attention to it so much and we get so energized by it. If you were to use a red wallpaper on your laptop or for your phone, your eyes would get tired quicker. So the reason why Microsoft or Apple would get comes with that nice blue, kind of light bluish wallpaper background. That's the standard. We see blue sky our whole lives, right? And it's less energetic to us, which means we can look at our screen longer with a blue background than if it was red. Try it. If you have to change it to red and try to work on it for a couple days, you're like, just start yawning after like a couple hours. Why am I so tired of looking at this screen? Right? So colors impact us, right? Any colors are interpreted depending on their experience with them. All right, we'll talk about the eye, right? But first, let's just kind of get all the concepts of the eye. All right, we have our cornea, the portion of the eye through which light passes through, the pupil in the lens, right? The cornea is that part, if you look at somebody's eye from the side, you see the little bump, right? That convex shape. That's the cornea. That's where light's going to pass through and go inside that pupil that we saw in diagrams, right? So light starts to go in there. So it's bent in a way or curved to provide focus, to get the light to kind of start to funnel into a point. That's why it's curved. That's why it's not flat. Right? If it's flat, it shoot off light straight. But if it's curved, you bend the light to meet at a point so that the focus goes straight. All right, don't we say that pupil has that constrictive muscle, right? Opens and closes, kind of a sphincter, as we said. The iris, the color part, right? It controls the size. The lens, focusing incoming light rays onto an image on the retina, on the eyeball sensitive inner surface. So the lens is there to take in light information and make an image in the back of the eye. And from there, you'll start to process and maybe create a higher resolution image as your cells start to pick up detailed information. So after entering the eye, being focused by the lens, light energy particles strike the eye's inner surface, which is called the retina. The retina contains two types of receptors. We say rods and cones. Cones for colors, rods for grayscale, dim light, contrast colors. Has layers of neurons that begin processing the visual information. And then we have a combination of process by which the eye's lens change shape to focus near or far objects on the retina. So the lens of your eye actually moves. It changes shape whether you're trying to see something far and squint, or you see something close. You kind of relax it if it's close. You got to make it more tight. It kind of bends a little bit more if you're looking at far objects. So here's a representation of our eye, right? So we say, hey, the iris was the colored part, right? And it just reflects light. That's what the color we see, right? Depending on the pattern of this iris. The cornea is that bump on the outside, right? The pupil is where it dilates and constricts. Lens is behind the pupil, right? It starts to, this can bend and move so that you can focus. Shoots it back to the retina. The retina is actually all of this back surface back here, right? But a ton of cells can make an image of what we're looking cortex to start processing, interpreting, like making sense. What am I looking at? Like shape, depth, size, color, etc., etc. All right, so then let's see if I can do this trick, right? Because we say, hey, you know what? The camera is built off the construct of the eye. So the camera on your phone, or your laptop, or your tablet is built on the same kind of concept, right? You have a lens, tries to focus an image, and then that sensor is kind of, the sensor would kind of be the retina, picks up all that information to make an image, and then the processor would be the brain, where it starts to interpret in detail what that image is, right? And then you're like, well, we can zoom in, right? So we can zoom in with the lens, right? But we maybe change the shape of the lens as we zoom. We maybe flatten it out, we're looking at something close, we don't have to zoom. So the same kind of concept. But depending on other circumstances, the light can only move at about 30 frames per second. So your phone will come standard at whatever, 4K or 1080p, 30 frames per second. That means the motion of activity that your eyes can actually keep up with, right? If anything above that, let's say you change your smartphone, you're like, I want to record in 4K, 60 frames per second. And you go back and look at that video, it's gonna look weird to your eyes, right? The movement looks weird. It looks cool, but it looks a little weird, like my eyes can't keep up with the image. I'm seeing it like a half a second, like what it's supposed to. Right, so sometimes that can create somewhat optical illusions on how fast something is going. Like if you have a fan, right? You look like a fan blade, but it looks like the blade is coming towards me or something, right? Getting closer. So here's one, right? This is kind of the wobbly pin trick, right? So what it's supposed to do is if I move this pin up and down really fast, it actually looks like the pin bends. Like it's not a solid object, but it's like a flexible, wiggly pin. Let me see if you can see, all right? So look up here and look at me, see if you can see if it looks like this wobble. Yeah, so remember we said, hey, your brain can only process 30 frames per second, right? Just like the camera on the tablet, right? If you move it faster than 30 frames per second, your brain is like, yeah, it's overstimulated, right? It's trying to keep up, so it just wants to know where it's at. It's like, okay, I give up, but I want to know where that pin is at, but I don't need to know exactly the real deal of how it's moving. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, just think about that with your cameras. You're like, oh, okay, the camera's built on the same concept. It has to make sense because we have to process what we see with the camera with the brain. Okay? So it won't make sense. So yeah, we go even resolution. Like, hey, we all have a different resolution. Who here wears glasses? Raise your hand. Okay, who here wears either glasses or contacts? Raise your hand. Who here wears none? All right, it's about half and half. So, for those of you who wear contacts or glasses, who here's father, as well as you know, wears contacts or glasses? No, who's here mom wears contacts? Usually it's determined by mom, usually, right? It's the sex chromosome X. You know that females are X, men are X, Y. So usually you have a high likelihood of wearing glasses than mom has bad vision.
Question. Because I'm curious about that because my dad wears glasses. Like it's genetic from my dad's side of the family.
Yeah, and it can still happen, right? We're just saying just a higher likelihood. But remember we said dominant recessive genes? Dad's genes won out for vision, so now you gotta have your glasses, right? So his genes won out for that aspect. Other things can impact. We say it's not always genetic, it's environmental too. Remember we said nature nurtures both. You know, if you begin to become pre-diabetic or diabetic, you start to develop blurred vision. So usually if they start to diagnose you as like, oh, you're getting close, pre-diabetic, whatever, you get pulled out, you'll also notice that your vision gets worse. Things start to get blurry. So like diet, right? Disease can impact it. Other things too. We say exposure. Hey, are you a tablet baby? Did you grow up with nothing but tablets and phones and TVs in your face? Are you on that laptop all the time? Right? So like other things in the environment can impact vision. It's not like it's gonna stay perfect forever regardless. Probably get worse, right? Okay, so quickly, we have more rods than cones, right? Nature says it's more important to see movement than it is to see color, right? Nature says it's more important to see threading movement than it is to know what the colors, you know, someone's wearing, or the color of a flower, or the color of a berry. But color's important too, because we do gotta know, hey, on our experience, what colors of berries not to eat out in the wild, what colors of snakes tend to be more dangerous, black and yellow, right? Things like that, right? So color is also important to perceive as well, too. Just not as much as rods. All right, optic nerve carries the neural impulses from the eye to the brain, right? So once again, those neurons are there, converting visible light energy into electrical energy. And then we have a blind spot, going back, we have a blind spot here, right? So we have a little tiny blind spot in our eye, things we can't see. Usually it's associated with peripheral vision. So, like our vision is made to focus on things that we're actually pointed towards. But you can still see off to the side, just not a good resolution, right? So try it. Try to look forward towards me, but then keep your eye forward towards me and see if you can make out what's to the side. So here's the deal. For all of you, look forward towards me and see if you can read. If you ever read it. But just tell me if you ever see these letters clearly. If you're looking towards me. Are you still able to see the colors over here, or the letters or anything? But you can't really make them out clearly, right? So like it's important to know that what your brain would say, hey, this isn't important unless it moves. This movement might be threatening. Like, what? What's that movement? That's I never experienced it. Same if you're driving a car. You did it a billion times, you could text, drive what you need. But as soon as something off to the side, even if you're not paying attention, starts to get closer to your field of vision, you're like, there's a car talking on my light, right? So you have a blind spot to some degree, but it has its purpose. All right, we got something called parallel processing, the brain's ability to do many things at once. So when we see things, we see depth, right? How far we think it is, shape, what's the shape of the thing we're looking at, color, if we're able to pick up any color, and then with those rods, we say contrast, right? Contrast would be like how we can see something that's light and dark together. We're doing many, many things at once. So this is kind of how we would see a bird. If a bird flew past us, first thing we would notice from the bird is its motion, right? Our brain would signal that this is the most important thing to know, that it's moving, either it's moving or not. From there we would see the shape or form of the bird, right? And there we would see depth and see contrast, light and dark area, shading. And then lastly, when we said, because level of importance through evolution, we say we see color colors this dress?
White and gold, I'm sick of it, that dress is white and gold. No, it is not.
All right, raise your hand if you see white and gold. 1, 2, 3.
So you see
Five.
black,
Yeah.
you're lying.
I'm not sure.
Like, everybody, like, so you see black gold, I see. Black, you see black gold, you see black and gold at the top.
Raise your hand if you see white and gold. Okay, now remember, if we said, hey, those rods and cones mix, whether we're able to see contrast and color, well, we got RGB. Some of us may lack a little bit of red ISOs to convert to see like reddish things, that if we mix with green and blue, create certain colors. So if we're missing some cells of green or blue or red in our eye, we could tend to have somewhat of a color blindness, right? You know what I mean? Which means like, hey, we see certain colors, but other colors come out differently compared to other people, right? So like, everyone's kind of different in this case. About half of the class said white and gold. Raise your hand if it's blue and black. 1, 2, 3. Right, and it's weird because the first obvious thing is like, come on, like we don't believe people who say white is good, right? Like, how could you not see what I'm seeing, right? But this is a real thing. Try it, you know, try it with different people because it's about a 50-50 split here. Start testing people like colors of nails and stuff like that. And what color is it? And you'll notice that everybody sees something completely different. I see blue.
You see blue black, so that mean I'm colorblind?
No, that actually, let's see, here, let's see, what's the most accurate, let's see what the conclusion is on this.
How is that white though? You tell me that's not colorblind.
Alright, so look,
That's the one black now.
here's our, some of our conclusions. Look, individual edition. Studies suggest that people who wake up early, exposed to more daylight, were more likely to see the dress as white and gold. Conversely, those accustomed to expecting artificial light tended to see it as blue and black. Right? So those of us who see real daylight more in a day than those of us who see artificial light, inside interior light, as opposed to real sunlight, will see different colors. Right? So that means that some of us, alright, so some of us anchor the overexposed background as light, next creates an anchor causing the darker parts of the dress to appear black. The brain ignores the background. The dress appears white and gold. So, for those who say white and gold, when you look at this, your brain ignores the background. Right? For those of us who say blue and black, our brain says the background of this matters.
I see blue black now, but the first picture was white and gold.
Because maybe now you switch your brain and say, oh, focus on background, right? So think about that. You're like, oh, because think about it. You say these are automatic processes, not conscious. Now you're consciously aware, you're like, oh, I see it now. Right? Because you told your brain, consider background now too. And now there could be a different
But I see
connection.
the thing, it says something about the light that makes it different.
Yes, the light also makes a difference. But it also makes it different in terms of what we'll focus on, right? In terms of what we'll focus on, actual dress, or the whole picture, dress and background combined, that'll create a different perception.
Isn't it also like where they show two squares with different colors, but it's the same color, but you perceive it as a different color?
Yes, and that's the way our brain, when we say our brain organized to see if things are, how similar they are and how different. So even if we see two squares, some of us will say, oh, two things means different. Some of us say it only means different if my brain can interpret they're actually different sides. So part of that would be, some of us have good spatial awareness. We're like, oh man, I can see these two squares are exactly the same size, right? And with that concept, our brain will focus differently. Okay, I'm not paying attention to size anymore. I'm looking at color. Others will say, I'm also looking at shape and size as part of my way to interpret. So your brain loses focus. You know what I mean? And with the focus, we say activation of cells. How many cones are activated when you look at it? And how many rods are activated? And that mixture is what will give you pretty much the color image that you will see. All right, here's another one. It's the spinning dancer. Focus on it. What do you think? Clockwise, raise your hand.
Can you play it again?
Okay, play it again. Remember we said clockwise is this counter.
I'll be honest. I was playing with it and I made it do this. I don't know why.
That you were singing going both.
Yeah, I was doing so. I was like switching because I was like, I don't like that. It's weird.
Okay. Before the show was slow down. What were your thoughts were when you saw it going fast? Clockwise. Anybody saw it going opposite? Counterclockwise. You saw it opposite. You said a little bit of metal, like a twist.
Yeah.
Can you replay it?
It was like, it could do left or then the right.
Okay. Let me have a good overview. We want to see it fast. Clockwise, raise your hand. Counterclockwise, just both. So, okay, so most people say just doing both. Right, we all interpret different ways. So we say, hey, some of us pick up movement different than others, right? For a host of reasons. perception, right? How we see the shapes of things, right? How we organize and interpret these shapes and colors into meaningful perceptions. People tend to organize pieces of information into wholes or gestalt, which means what parts make up the sum of something. How we view something as either a whole picture or the bits and pieces that make it up. Some of us view things in a different way. What do you see here? When you look at this image, what do you see? Can you make out any shapes?
Yeah,
What?
it can look like
Okay. Who here can see the three-dimensional cube?
I see it.
Oh, I see it now.
Who here can see the cube?
From this thing.
Right, so we all see things differently. Some of us, remember we said it's about focus. Some of us would just say, oh, I want to pay attention to all the little circles first and see what the circles are doing. And then some of us say, our brain interprets, say, no, full image. If I look at full image, I can see that there's a pattern, a connection pattern that I've seen maybe a million times. All right, we have something called figure ground, the organization of the visual field into objects or their figures that stand out from their surrounding, to ground. So we're looking at the figures versus the ground. How many people here see a vase? Who here sees a vase?
A face.
Vase, like you would, yeah, something you could put a candle in or some flowers.
I see faces.
Who here sees the vase? Who here sees two faces? So you can see both.
I don't see the face, I'm trying.
It's like both, like imagine like the face switch background is just color. So if you can switch
Oh. I see a face.
You see a
If
vase?
you actually like try to see a face, you
Yeah.
can see the shape of the, like where the white is.
Yeah, even going back to that dress, it was either, when you look at an image, are you focused on, like, which background are you focused on? Or which form are you focused on? The thing you think is in front or the thing you think is in the side? If you think things are in the front, then you're gonna ignore this. But if you think this is the central focus, then you'll ignore this and just create that face shape. Alright, I want to get to ear and touch before we move on. But here's something interesting. Right, we have the visual clip, depth perception. So children and dogs have pretty good depth perception, right? At a very young age, which means they've done experiments to see with children to see if there's a visual clip. So look here, we're like there, we put a glass or transparent floor or top over this pattern. The pattern continues, but the child sees it differently. The child sees it as like, oh, there's a cliff, and if I pass this line, I'll fall down into, even though he won't, right? The dog would usually kind of do the same too. So, who here has a dog? Who has a dog? What you'll notice, like dogs walking down the street, there's like the vents on the street where there's like a gutter drain. Dogs walk around it. Yeah, dogs don't walk over those like large corrugated little vent systems like downtown, right? You know, like water can go through. Dogs walk around it because they've already perceived that there's a difference in height, right? Baby here too, right? Baby's like, no, I can fall down there even though the pattern continues. So baby recognizes pattern difference, right, of depth. All right, let's get to here. All right, hearing, sound waves from the environment to the brain, right? Sound waves compress and expand air molecules, and ears detect these brief pressure changes, right? So we have the eardrum. It actually looks like there's a bone tapping on the eardrum. Vibration, we're looking at pressure of sound waves. We start to funnel that information deeper to the ear sense. Right, so we have audition, which is the sense of hearing amplitude, the height again, or intensity, loudness of sound waves. The length is the frequency determines the pitch of the sound. Right? The sound is measured in decibels. Right, so usually on old school radios, it'll show the decibel level as you crank it up or down. And kind of same thing with vision, where we create different sounds, though, in terms of the amplitude or length of the waves. Sound waves are bands of compressed air. So when we hear sound in the medium of air that we are in, we take it in to make sense of compression or expansion of the ear. So human ears detect these changes in air pressure and transform them into neural impulses. The brain decodes those impulses as sound. Right? Sound waves are vibrating air. Bless you. We have the middle ear, the cochlea, and the inner ear. The middle ear is a chamber between the eardrum and cochlea. It contains 3 tiny bones, which we call, there's the hammer, there's the hammer, the signal, and the and the cochlea is a coiled bony fluid-filled tube, and the inner ear contains nerve receptors, and we also have little hair fibers in there called cilia, right, in the inner ear. So sound waves strike the eardrum, causing the eardrum to vibrate. Tiny bones in the middle ear pick up the vibrations, transmit them to the cochlea with that fluid-filled coiled tube in the inner ear. Those ripples in the fluid of the cochlea bends those cilia, those hair cells, lining the surface, which trigger the nerve impulses in those cells, right? And here is sort of an illustration of how that works. All right, so we have our auditory canal, we have our outer ear, visible part. Sound waves come into the auditory canal, right? Gets compressed, right? There's 2 kind of arrows. Go to the bones of the middle ear. There's 3 of them, right? And then it starts to funnel into the auditory node with that fluid-filled cochlea, and go further down into the cilia, which has hairs. And then it proceeds to go to the auditory cortex, right? Or temporal lobe, or size of your head in terms of where your brain is located, right? Temporal lobe, right? Okay, so we got 3 little, actually got a video here that we can look at. We have 3 little bones, the hammer, the anvil, and the stereo. And they all vibrate based on different sound amplitudes and frequencies. Let me see if I can show you the video.
Inside your ear, sounds are nothing complex achieving effects. They enter as pressure waves, which push and pull your eardrum,
So here's a good sound
making it
right there.
vibrate.
So we have that little bone pressing up against the eardrum. too, and your nose too, right? Even as you move further within your nose, you have blood hairs, but then you have actual cilia to pick up chemical receptors as well too. Okay, and then touch. Okay, so touch is interesting, right? Because touch, remember what we said with the eye is a combination of patterns and things, right? That happen. The same happens when smell. You're like, smell is it interprets a combination of chemical signals that goes into your nose, to your olfactory nerve. Taste, you say taste is a combination of things on the taste buds, or the receptor cells in between the taste buds, right? But touch is actually unique too. So we have a mixture of 4 distinct skin senses. We detect pressure, we detect warmth, cold, and pain. So outer skin sensations are variations of these basic 4. So let me ask you, what would be the combination of these things for you to feel something hot? What combination of these things would create the sensation, right, of hot? A combination, so it has to be at least 2. Warmth and pressure. Anyone else? I would say in order to create some sort of sensation, it has to be a combination of these things happening. Perceive it as something. What do you think? Like your sensation of something hot is a combination of these 4 distinct skin senses. Which combinations would create hot? Hot is a combination of cold and warm. Right? So cold and warm mixed together creates a feeling of a shock. And shock is what we perceive as hot. The body is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything that goes above 98.6 degrees that our skin senses makes warm receptors and cold receptors touch, get closer. And that activates a sense of shock. That's why burning feels like a shock, right? But it's just really a combination of sensing 2 different patterns and things. But it's interesting, like, hey, just the way this is all set up, it's just phenomenal. Okay, other things, we perceive pain, right? Approaches to pain. There are a lot of different influences. Activity in the spinal cord's large and small fibers influence pain biologically. Genetic differences in endorphin production, right? Endorphin, we say, hey, is a neurotransmitter that can perceive pain, right? And also block it as well, too, right? And psychological influences. If you look at, you get cut. Let's say you get cut really bad. If you look visually at that cut, will it hurt? Right? So you're like, hey, visually seeing harm or an injury makes the experience, the interpretation worse. Right? Because I don't like to get needles or shots. So instead of a big giant grown man, I still look away like a 5. Yeah, you can feel about like it feels less than if I was anticipating it. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, and this really really about why when someone is in shock, they don't feel it, even when they're supposed to be in pain. Yeah, something happened, but they don't feel it.
Yeah. So remember that going back to flight or flight, right? Activates all sorts of chemicals and transmitters. What happens is it activates pain blocking signals, right? So you get so excited that in your brain, you start to block signals out like morphine, Tylenol, anything else, right? You have those in your body, but now you've concentrated, shot them out at such speed, now you don't feel it, right? Because you've energized or impulsed yourself or stimulated yourself up to the point to where it just floods that area. And it's all there for you to survive and calm down, right? If you want to be able to stop that pain and calm down, no, you might have a heart attack. You won't survive. Alright, so like even right, even things like learning based on experience or expectations. Let's say if you grew up in a household where your mom was frantic about any little bump, nudge, fall, injury you have, you may, you know, this is what kids do, right? So let's say if a kid falls down and hurt themselves, do they look at their parents or look at somebody next close to them? They look at somebody come, like, before they start crying, they'll turn around and look.
Oh, you're not just start crying.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you okay? Then they cry.
You okay, brush it off, and then they go run like nothing happened.
Yeah, so if you make it not a big deal, even for adults, you're like, man, somebody got shot. You don't want to excite them. But what you want to tell them is like, oh, it's not that bad. It's not bad at all. Right? Why? Because think about it. If you excite that person, the blood pumps harder, they'll bleed out.
Yeah, I heard that's why a lot of people do that because they too blood be pumping.
Yeah. Yeah, flight kicks in.
So when you get shot, you wanna like kind of feel a breather, even though you're in pain.
You want to talk to that person to distract their brain. So the paramedics, they probably ask them questions that don't even matter. Right? Look at that impulse. So no, what I'm saying is you want to keep somebody's mind distracted. That's what the paramedics do. Right? What did you have to eat today? Like, why is that matter?
Yeah, they ask you like a random question. Like, I have this picture in my head. And I just because my head was bleeding out. And when the ambulance came, he was like, oh, what you said, or, oh, like just asking random
I
stuff.
used to feel so bad when they did that. So I'm like, that was probably the stuff, but now I don't.
Yeah.
I was calm regardless though, because like I said, like when you grow up and I bumped my head or something. No, I ran into, we all think I ran in the house, you go hurt yourself. I literally ran into the face before, and like, I thought my two front teeth. And I didn't cry because I was like, I told you to stop, you gonna be okay. Like she didn't overreact.
Yeah. That she didn't say like, oh my gosh, are you okay?
Hell no, she didn't do that, she said.
Yeah, she flipped in your mind. She's like a little bit of like frustration and anger, like I told you, right?
Literally. It was
So
like-
yeah, but if she would have came with you like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you probably had a different reaction. Okay, so like we said, hey, the presence of others, sociocultural things, empathy for others' pains and cultural expectations, right? This all creates our personal experience of pain. So, let me ask you, do the presence of others make you feel more or less pain? Persons. Like if you had people you knew and some support and some bad happened, but it helped? Or would that make you more sad and cry? Okay, now what about cultural things? Let's say ethnic backgrounds, your cultural ethnic background, how you're kind of expected to perceive pain, or maybe even sex and gender, right? Maybe in some essence, men are kind of socialized to say, "You're not supposed to cry. Yeah, you hurt yourself. Man up," right? And so even our response is based on those expectations of how we think we should respond. Right? So it's interesting, just great unique experiences of pain. All right, we will, before we get out of here, let's do one more. We got to do taste, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, taste. Quickly, taste, right? Involves several basic sensations, has a survival function, taste profiles that four basic ones that we know, and then umami was kind of added later. We say sweet, salty, sour, bitter, right? Different parts of your tongue potentially has more concentration of different cells for receptors for these tastes. So at the front of your tongue, there's a higher concentration of sweet and salty receptors. Hence why most people like potato chips and soda, right? It's the first thing receptor-wise that's gonna hit your taste buds. Sour, potentially toxic acids, those are more on the side of your tongue. But let me ask you, why would bitter taste buds receptors be located at the back of your tongue? Why is there a high concentration of bitter taste bud receptors? Way at the back before you actually swallow. Why would that be?
It's not because if it's my stomach, right, basically like something stuff, like, even though I, your man is making something, I feel like if something ain't right, your body, your man is gonna do something ain't right.
Yeah, you're like, hey, bitter is at the back of the tongue in case something's spoiled or rotten. So that you can spit it up or throw it up. So right before it goes down, you pick up information and say, is this milk spoiled? Your tongue will pick up the information. Say, this tastes like spoiled milk. This tastes like rotten food or something takes off. You might swallow it on mistake and then you gag and throw it up, right? For your own survival, right? So that's located more towards the back of the tongue. Umami is usually, glutamites, right? Which are proteins. So it's usually for a taste of meaty or savory things, kind of like steak. Who likes steak? Raise your hand if you're a steak person. Who doesn't like steak? Raise your hand if you care less. You know, I'll go out to all these fancy restaurants and everybody orders steak and they like kind of give me flack. So I'm like, I don't like it. Because they always feel so fancy with it.
Yeah, like a steak.
Medium rare, porterhouse. Yeah, I'll have it.
I'm a seafood type of girl.
I like seafood. Love seafood.
I just should just be a pescatarian, and it is one pescatarian.
Yeah, so we have about 10,000 taste bud receptors, and then two, we lose taste bud receptors as we age. So your mom or your grandma may not be able, they may need more sugar to taste the same amount of sweetness as you taste, right? Because they've actually lost taste bud receptors over time. Another thing too is tongue scraping. It's good to clean your tongue because if you get that little film, that biofilm, it's gonna get in the way of you taking in the chemical receptors, right? So so it's good to kind of clean your tongue every day so that you don't have to require as much sugar or salt to actually receive the taste to your brain, right? Kind of resistance. Yeah, think about it, right?
If we went over, put all the hot over there, like, you can't taste that hot sauce?
And then quickly, we didn't really get to smelling, but smell has its own way of interpreting, which is different than all these other ones. These are all sent to the thalamus for interpretation, but smell bypasses the thalamus and goes to the olfactory bulb. For the reason that smell is connected to memory and emotions. A high degree of memory and emotions on smell. So if it's something, like say you smell something you haven't smelled in a long time, it smells like your grandfather who passed away, quickly in your mind you're like, man, there's a memory of your mind goes. Yes. Absolutely. So smell has its own components and also mixed with taste to make it food. Yeah, and it's memories. Think about it. You may get nauseous because in your mind you're picking up those customers